Great, thanks so much. As Jason mentioned, this is for existing customers that already own some of these capabilities. And so we want to highlight the value you could achieve by using these capabilities, as well as give you an overview of some of the latest capabilities as well. Just a brief introduction, we are partner with ServiceNow, and our area of expertise is IT business management. And our definition of that also includes the IT service management and software asset management space as well. Today's focus is going to be around project portfolio management. So if there's other areas of ITBM that you need assistance in the future, we can definitely assist you with demos as well as helping you get value out of your ServiceNow investments. So in terms of brief introduction, I'm going to keep this quick because we want to spend most of our time in the product today. And feel free to shout if you have questions as we go through. So don't be shy. So typically when you're looking at the project portfolio management set of solutions, typically there's three key questions that are typically being asked. So one is, what are we working on? What are we doing? So typically executives need that visibility, need to make sure we're investing in the right things, especially in this type of environment. And then once we have visibility, then are we doing the right things? Are those things going to help us drive both short-term and long-term results for the organization? And we know with the pandemic here, it's causing us all to have to shift, but it's good to have that visibility. It's good to be able to understand where the dollars are going so we can invest wisely. And then the last but not least is, how can we do things better? How can we do things in a more agile, expedited fashion? And so we'll highlight how you can use different execution methodologies as you use the solution as well. So if I go to the next slide here, just to kind of give you an idea of some of the capabilities here from a product perspective, you'll see the ones here in purple. These are the ones that you would own if you own the IT SA Unlimited SKU. So what we're going to focus on the demo today is to focus on those areas that you would currently own. So from demand management, manage that demand intake process, managing coming into a look at those proposed projects, business cases, then being able to look at those, review and approve those, do some strategic planning around those, then be able to manage that project portfolio. You can also do that end-to-end enterprise resource management from a human perspective, and then be able to manage your project financials, time cards, and as appropriate if you wanted to use the Agile capabilities. So that's a differentiator on the platform here is you can do traditional waterfall, you can do Agile, but you can also do hybrid project delivery as well. So we're going to highlight that in the solution. The next, I kind of like to show from a life cycle perspective how you can use the different capabilities, as well as I want to highlight what we're going to focus on today due to the short time frame. So within the project portfolio management solution, you can manage ideas and look at having an overall ideation process. We're going to focus today starting at demand. So this is that overall project proposal where you're doing your business case, getting that evaluated and prioritized and approved. And then you would go in and do your strategic planning, looking at those demands that you've prioritized and determining which ones you can fund based upon your financial and resource constraints. Then from there, we can approve the work. And so whether it be strategic projects we can support, operational type work, we can make sure that's being captured. But you can also then manage those projects from a waterfall, agile, hybrid, scrum fall, whatever type of methodology or hybrid you're using today. So our focus of the demo today is going to focus on demand, portfolio, and then managing your projects. As you're going through that process, there's the resource management capabilities, financials, as well as time management. So I'm just going to give you a couple of highlights here as well before we jump into the demonstration. So we talked about the importance of aligning your investments to your initiatives. So you'll be able to align those investments to different strategies you have in the organization. And I'll highlight that in the demonstration. Obviously, next you'll be able to kind of really look at, as you're planning the work, planning your projects, where do we need to make adjustments? So you'll be able to look at making those type of adjustments with your project portfolio. There are multiple ways that you can view and manage some of the work on your mobile phone. So there's the project status mobile app as part of the ServiceNow agent app. There's also a newly released Agile app, so you can manage and view your stories and make updates to all your stories for those doing Agile development as well. And then, as we mentioned, you can do Agile on the platform. There's also some out-of-the-box integrations with Jira and Azure now. So if you're using those tools, you can have that roll up into the project so that the project manager can get visibility into what's occurring with those development teams. So a lot of benefits here with the platform. And we do see many customers continuing to partner with ServiceNow. And we're seeing customers migrate over from other products over to ServiceNow's PPM solution, the power of the platform and just the strength of the actual PPM solution. So I'm going to jump into the demo here. So I'm going to start here and just kind of give you some visualizations here. And so this here is a couple of configured pages. You'd be able to set this up with your current licensing here to look at getting a view across the enterprise portfolio. So your pipeline here can be your demands and initiatives. Here we can look at your projects by phase. You can see here it's kind of aligned to the PMBOK methodology. So access to that information, I can look at some of our planned spend here by different classifications, investment classes, such as change the business versus run the business, as an example. You can always, and many of you I think are using ServiceNow today, so you probably have dashboards. You can create these reports and then publish those, so you can easily use these and then drill into the information below. Also here, besides just looking at your project costs, you can actually put in your projected benefits for each investment on your projects, and then you can kind of track the benefits achieved for those projects. So that's another capability here. It's kind of highlighted with this particular view. As you know, you can use visual task boards. So here's just showing you a visual task board in the solution here. This is from looking at all your different project change requests. We see organizations using visual task boards, say, to manage the demand through their project review board meetings and being able to easily manage that through that process. Next, just to kind of highlight here, different types of views that you might want to look across the portfolio, understand what type of risks that you're dealing with across your project portfolio, as well as looking at some core indicators of on time, on budget type of analysis. Here again, at your fingertips, and you can drill in and look at those issues, look at the status reports or the milestones. Here again, you typically wouldn't have this many delayed milestones. This is definitely demo data. So what I wanted to do next is start at the demand process, and I'm going to go over here to the role of a business relationship manager. So here is a business relationship manager here, and I would want to come to the demand. So typically we like to, as part of implementation, configure these role-based dashboards. So this is another configured page, and this is looking at demands coming across the organization. So I'm seeing those demands coming in. I'm seeing that trend coming in, so I can manage that. I can slice and dice that data if I wanted to slice it by business capability or application or business unit. What's also nice with demands, right? We're creating that business case, we're creating that resource forecast, as well as the financial forecast. So I can see the financial forecast here across multiple dimensions called cost types. Here I can look at the forecasted resource needs across these demands, as well as projects, as you can view here. So at that point, the demand manager manages that demand coming in, and they can then look at and go in and see the 103 demands. In terms of how you can get the demand in, so many of you are probably using the service portal today. So as an example here, you could come in and actually share the demand or this project demand on your portal. So just like another kind of catalog item, this is actually just a record producer of the demand. And this is where we can keep it simple. We can just have some high-level fields to enter, fill that in, and then submit that. So they'll have one place to go. for all the different types of requests. And then they'd be able to track the overall status for that. So we're going to go back here as the demand manager, and let's see as we dive in and look at managing the different demands. So we can see here we've got various demands here that are in process. So we can come in here and look at a particular demand and kind of give you an idea of how you would manage your demand here in ServiceNow. So as you recognize today, this is a standard ServiceNow page. So from a demand perspective, it's got various stage gates. So you can set up those workflows and automated tasks to manage those stage gates. You've got various out-of-the-box artifacts as well as attributes of your project. So by portfolio, investment class, investment type. Here again, if you want to change those, we typically can adjust those as a part of the implementation process. We can see here that this one actually was generated from an idea. So you don't have to start there. You can definitely just start as demand like we showed on the front end. Here's your business case. So you could have the organization fill out the business case. You could identify all the different fields that you wanted to track here with your business case. So here we're seeing things about risks, scope, out of scope items, here assumptions. So you can have that entered in to the system. If you wanted to, you could do the attachment as we've used before, or you could use the managed documents for version control. From a financials perspective, we're seeing some costs here being estimated for this demand. So we're seeing an overall total plan cost of $868,000. We're seeing some of that's CapEx and OpEx. So we're going to go find out where that's coming from. And we also see over here that we have an overall negative net present value. Here we've got an overall financial benefits. So we must have some benefit plans here. And so we can kind of manage this demand as we go through the process. The other thing here that's out of the box is you can identify your risk and value ratings. So it's kept really simple. A lot of times organizations have multiple dimensions there that we would configure. Also out of the box, there is a survey. So you can actually survey business users or others to come up with a more of objective overall scoring. And so you could use the survey here in the system. Down below, we see some of the out of the box related items. So you can have your stakeholders here, determine whether or not they should be receiving an assessment, or they just someone to approve here. We've got resource plans, or these are the resource estimates. Cost plans are your cost estimates, and benefit plans are your benefits. So we're going to go look at those items here at the demand level. So I could come over here and look at from a demand and see my different resource plans. So we can set those up from a group perspective or a role-based perspective. We can see here these happen to have already been allocated. They've already been requested to work on this particular demand. So a lot of times organizations don't assign people to work on the demand, but you can assign them tasks just to build the solution, build the business case. In this case, we can see someone's already been actually allocated. What's nice here too, and you wouldn't necessarily use it in the demand process, but you can get visibility into each one of those groups or roles. So in this case, we kind of looked at, let's look at the analysts. Let us understand who potentially would be available if we're going to start this project next week. I can then see this heat map of who's available when. I can also then see all the different projects that are currently assigned to and working on. So great visibility. But the core focus here with the demand is to do your overall estimates. So those resource plans, what's nice when you do the resource plans, you can put in your overall blended rate, and that would then generate an overall financial estimate for your demand. And that was going to roll up into that overall business case and the plan cost. So we can now see here, we can see the high-level financial summary of our plan cost. The budgeted costs that we plan on presenting. Obviously, we haven't presented this for approval yet. We're still going through iterations, so we'll need to update the budget before we go to get that approved. And we can see here some various benefits. So we can see here that the financial benefit we're forecasting right now is $850,000, but we still have a negative return here based upon the cost. Down below here, we can see the different cost plans. So when we created those resource forecasts or resource plans, it auto-creates these cost plans for the labor, and that's using the blended rate. Then we can see down here I've got some non-labor items here, such as hardware as an example. So I can always come in and add additional requests. So maybe I'm going to purchase some additional software. I can look at the software type and identify here the cost associated with that, and I can submit that. So now we should increase this, probably just going to go up right over 900,000 with that increased cost. So we can see how that is rolled up here in the estimated cost for this particular demand. So they would continue to go through this process. We can see this one's actually been through the approved state. Obviously, we need to get the updated budget here, and so we can make that update as well. Next type of activity typically occurs is, say you actually approve this, or you want to wait for a final approval. You can do one of two things. You can look at your demand workbench here and kind of look at all the other demands and look at the risk and value, determine if you've got the right prioritization here of these requested projects. The next thing that you can do is come over and look at the portfolio workbench. This is where you can perform some strategic planning with the different portfolios. So I'll just pull into the IT transformation portfolio here. These portfolios are based on annual planning. And so we see here with the fiscal year 19. And so this is where I have good data for the demo. Then I could come in here and do the what if analysis here by selecting different demands or projects. And so what I've got here is a couple different views. I've got my bubble chart here for the demands. So I could view that information here, or I can come over to the timeline view and kind of pick and choose the different projects and demands. While I do that, I can then see the cost impacts. Is that going to fit within our overall allotted budget? As well as down below here, do we have enough capacity to meet the demand for these different projects? What I'd like to do from a demo purposes here is set this on auto refresh. So as we're doing that what if analysis and saying, okay, this looks good, but what if we were to do this mobile app solution? What would that drive in terms of finance and resources? What if we were to come over here and add in this new services portal? What's that going to do to our overall cost? So we can see that information being updated here in the views that we have to the right. And so I'm able to kind of view into that. I can do some utilization. So depending on if I've got the groups or roles set up, so I can kind of see really where do I have gaps. If we're going to approve these items, then we need to make sure we have enough resources on board at the right time. I can see the actual timeline here. So what's nice is I can actually update the time and push that time out of the demand. So I can see, hey, we're really tight here, but I could look at pushing it out further in the year. So this one here, starting in the October timeframe, so I could just click here and say, okay, let's move that here to the end of November, and I can update that, and that's going to then move that out from an overall timeline perspective. So a lot of different capabilities here. What you can do once you can see that being moved out to the end of November. Once you go through this process, if you like, you can hit confirm. It'll actually approve all the demands, which are those in purple that you've selected, and then it'll auto-create the project. So that's how you'd go through that final planning process. So I'm going to pause there just for a second, see if we have any questions around demand intake and here with some of your strategic what-if planning. So what I'm going to do next is move to the project side of things and go in here at actually managing projects as a manager. So I'm going to go over here to the actual workspace. So the things that I've been showing you here are things that you would have access to as part of your ITSA Unlimited SKU. There are some enhanced things that you won't have access to, and that's really performance analytics and some of the reporting. But all the reporting that I've seen here is you can configure and set that up. So I can come in here and look at different projects here and be able to manage those projects in the system. So I'm going to go look at this social media project. And so what we can see here in this particular view, this is kind of the cockpit or the console for project managers to manage his or her project. So you've got some various KPIs, you've got various other report views that you can have here to kind of view what's going on. This can be fully configured. This is basically a demo page with various report widgets on it, but the ones that are pulling in information specifically for the project. Next, if we come over and look at the details page, this is where the information is flowing across from the demands that have been approved, and it'll come across over here into the project, and we'll be able to see the information flowing here. So down below, if we go look at the details, some of those investment types and classifications will be coming across. Next, we can come over to the business case. This is definitely something the project manager will start off with, getting familiar with the business case, understanding what strategies. We talked earlier about how do we align these investments to the different strategy goals. You can see here, you can define your corporate strategies and then align each individual demand and project to those strategies. We can look at the financials. So here we're looking at planned cost, the actual cost here, looking at some of those that we showed earlier as well. You'll notice here out of the box kind of aligns with the PMBOK methodology. So can initiate, planning, executing, and closing. They have added the delivering kind of for that go live and launch set of activities. And as usual, you can set up your various workflows and approvals as appropriate to manage. If we go down below here, we have a lot of different project controls that we can manage on our project. So things that you expect, you can manage your issue log, can be here. There's an issue, a risk form. Here's my issue log. I can manage my issue actions, project change requests. I can manage here as well. So those are some of the ones that are out of the box. Out of the box, you still have your resource plans, your cost plans, your benefit plans. Since this happens to be a hybrid project, I can see actually some stories that can be worked on with the team using the ServiceNow platform, or maybe they're using another third-party tool, and those are so you can give the project manager visibility to what's going on. I can see another summary of a lot of the tasks here at the project level as well. So that information is available and be able to manage those logs. Also, the other thing that you can do here too, if you want to manage your risk log, your issue log, right, you can manage those here, just a click away. You can manage that log, create new ones. So a couple different ways that you can go about managing your issue or risk logs. Next, we'll go over here, look at the project plan, the project schedule. So what we're going to be highlighting here that's unique here with ServiceNow is I can do the traditional waterfall as you'd expect, but I've also then have an agile sprint. So I'm actually managing a hybrid project here. So that's really nice. In terms of making updates here, I can make updates to the individual items here on the left. I can actually make updates to items over here on the right. So it depends upon your preference. So you can definitely do that. I could come in here and assign resources at the task level. So you can definitely do that. Here again, I need to have the right rights to do that, but you can just come in and make those assignments. I'm just going to move to the next page. So what I really like about this is that depending upon your project managers, you can really allow them to manage the project based upon their preference. So we have this, the workbench capability here. And so the workbench allows you to manage things in a different fashion. So even though here with initiating phase, we are doing waterfall tasks, I can put those tasks here in a Kanban board and manage it almost like an agile stand-up. I can do the same capabilities as those of you already know about visual task boards. So I can drag and drop those assignments. I can move these tasks and it'll update the status of my tasks. So I can choose to use this Kanban board from a project manager perspective. If I wanted to, if I want to just look at it from a list perspective, I could just look at those tasks from a list perspective, see the percent complete. Down here, I could use the core platform capabilities and assign resources to a task there as well. Then if I go over here and look at the actual Agile sprint, we can see those stories that we had on the details page. These will be those stories that are coming in for the team doing the development here on ServiceNow or with another third-party solution. So it gives the PMO, it gives the project manager visibility to those activities that are occurring, even though they're occurring with a different team using a different methodology. So typically get a lot of oohs and ahs when customers see the capabilities here and how project managers can manage the project based on their preference. Next, we'll go over here and kind of look at the resource. So this is going to look almost identical to what we saw on the demand management side of things. Actually, I need to get off of that one. And then over here, we're going to see the financials. This is almost identical to what we saw on the financial side. But there's also some additional things that we can do here. So if we wanted to look at this by cost type as an example, or let me look at it by CapEx and OpEx first. So we can kind of look at that CapEx and OpEx. Yes, we have those totals up above, but I can see these totals here. Then I can actually then look at all the different cost plans we have here. Some of our labor, non-labor, we got a lot of different hardware, software, as well as labor items coming in here for the cost of the actual project. Next here, we have the status report. So here we can see an overall status report. I think here you can actually then look at a history of your different status reports. So we can see different status reports. So you can have this consistent layout for your status reports. This can be fully configured. So we've done a lot of kind of nice graphical one-page status reports if that's something you prefer. But you can kind of pick and choose which widgets to keep. I do like the out of the box to be able to track your status history over time. So that's a real nice capability. And then the project managers, they don't have to do a lot for the status report because the key milestones will flow in from the project schedule. Same thing with the risks coming in from your risk log, your issue log, your change requests would come in. It's real simple to create a status report and create new, or you can create a copy. So we could come in here and create a copy of the status report. And we could come in here and say, yeah, we're now green. We could type in our overall health. We could type in last week's accomplishments, and then I can save that. You can go across here and look at your health across the different dimensions. So depending on what the project manager updates here, that's the status that's going to be reported across the system is based upon this overall health. So I can save that. So I've now created a brand new status report here. And this particular status report is here in terms of green status. So we changed that from the previous status report. I can print out the status report, save it to PDF, then you can distribute that out to other team members. So that's how I can manage my project. I can also toggle over to other projects. If I'm working on multiple projects, I can easily toggle. Here's a different view of the status report with better narrative here. So this project manager is actually working on it versus me doing a quick demo. So I can see the executive summary and accomplishments and planned activities. I could come over here and look at the resource view here. So you can see this is a rather large project with many different resource plans. So those plans are group or role-based. I can see the different statuses here. So they've requested a resource to the resource manager if you want to do this full end-to-end enterprise resource management. So just so you know, on resource management, you can do this simple, just assigning resources to tasks, what you're probably doing today. So you can see the example here. Or if you want to take it to the next level and really do resource capacity management, you can do the end-to-end resource management here. And that's where you would make an overall request. Then you would come back and get a confirmed or allocated resource, as we can see here, to actually fulfill that particular request. And then you could assign them with work. I could come in here and say, let's look at DBAs for a second. I can say, okay, who are the DPAs in the organization, what's their overall capacity. So if you're doing the full end-to-end resource management, you can get that heat map here, look at all the different DBAs, you'll be able to see all the different projects that they're currently working on. So that's really beneficial for a project manager as they are understanding everything that their team members are working on, even those outside of their project, but also helps in the conversation with different resource managers as you need to get resources assigned. So here we're now looking at the analyst group. We can see this group's been pretty utilized. We can see they're definitely a little overutilized here. So definitely they're kind of tapped out at this particular time. So that's how a project manager would go through here and manage his or her project. So I'll kind of pause and see if we have any questions.
John, if I might just jump in here, one of the questions that came up in a previous demonstration at this point was, what if our resources for operations or what have you are being managed in a different system? And John had a great answer that ServiceNow is one of the best platforms, or the best platform he's ever worked with for integrating or moving that information from one system into our system. So I don't know if that's applicable to anybody on the call, but I thought it was a nice call out.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can add to that as well. So say, we didn't really talk about actuals. We can see actuals here. So a lot of times organizations want to bring in their actuals, from their general ledger. And that way the project manager doesn't need to enter that in. They can see that flow in. So we do that a lot in terms of that integration, the ease of bringing data in. So that can be set up and just flow that general ledger actuals into the project. And that way project manager is keep up to date. That way you can keep projects on budget. So that's a very good point there, Jason. So appreciate you raising that. Also, when you talk a little bit about operational work, so here we're talking about projects, but if you're doing that end-to-end resource management, you can actually have your resources, work on operational work. So you got all the different types of work here on the ServiceNow platform. But in addition to that, you might want to just allocate a portion of their time to that operational work when you're doing your overall enterprise resource management. So all of that operational work, say it's X percentage of time on keep the lights on, that can be fully allocated. So then you are not allocating your resources on top of that. That's another good capability here besides just managing your project work. Next here, if we go to look at from a resource manager perspective, so I'm just trying to give you a high level review here end to end. So from a resource manager perspective, here again, this is another configured page that we'd set up as part of implementation. But this gives the resource manager a view of requests coming in, overdue requests coming in, looking at the overall pipeline and forecast of resources. They could see these requests. So these are really those resource plans that are now in that requested state. And I can see all those requests here. When they're requested, you can have an email trigger to send off there. Next, down below here, we're just kind of seeing some additional visibility. So it's kind of getting that same visibility we saw at the project level, but looking at different resources as a part of different departments and seeing their overall availability and capacity to work on work. The core function for the resource managers to come in and look at the allocation workbench. And so this is where they can come in and manage their team. So what you're highlighting here is you can have various types of allocation boards. So I could have one for my whole entire team, my analyst group, or we know some organizations have hybrid teams. So part of their team members are project managers, part of their team members are developers, as an example. And so I could have that DBA role-based board that I can manage. In this case, let's go keep it simple here for the analyst. And I'm going to remove the kind of searching for resources at this point. We can see here that I've got my overall resource allocation workbench. And we can see that we've got a couple requests coming in. You'll notice here that I can control what I view here based upon the timeline that I select, as well as what's the current state of the different resource plans. So here I could look at planning and I could see all of the planned resource plans. A lot of these would be coming in off of demands and projects. So in a sense, I could kind of get a pipeline view of what's coming in. But in this scenario, we're just looking at doing the actual requested resource needs. So I can look at those individual examples here. So this was a resource plan with a defined user. So I could look at that particular user here and see their availability before I make that decision. So I can then see here from Troy's perspective, looks like he has some capacity here. So I could definitely start assigning Troy to some work. I can see some other projects that Troy is working on. So at that point, I could come over here as a resource manager and I could hit allocate. So at that point, it keeps it real simple. I'm allocating Troy, Troy was requested, and I can allocate Troy to that work. So now Troy's going to be allocated to this study the feasibility. So now we've reduced and increased his overall allocation as an example. So it gives you a lot of different views to be able to manage. Next, I can come over here and look. Here we have another one specifically for Troy. We also have another one here. They're trying to look at one FTE. So a couple different ways of doing this one. I could actually come over here and do the same thing and allocate the whole entire team. I probably want to look at the team and look at the team's capacity. So here, since I've selected on this row, I can see all the team's capacity. I see that we do have some issues here. So I probably don't want to come up here and just do allocate the whole team. If I click on allocate, it's going to remind me and prompt me, do I want to allocate to the whole team? In that case, I'm going to say no, I'd really over allocate the team. So what I can do instead, I can say, yeah, let's go look at confirming just a couple of team members here. So I can confirm them for that particular request, as we can see up above. And then I can come over and do the actual allocation for them as well. So you can do a two-step process where you can name the specific person for that role or group, or I can come in here and do the allocation for a named resource. So that's how the resource manager can manage the workbench. If they want to get a good view of all the allocations for their team, they'd be able to see all the projects here for their team. And then we see many organizations using this view just for reporting purposes to look at all their team members and their overall capacity, as well as being able to see all the current projects they're assigned to. So a lot of power here in the overall resource allocation workbench. There's also some out-of-the-box reporting capabilities here as well from a resource perspective. So the one I'll kind of highlight here based on time, come in and look at the allocation page here. We're going to do that by group. We'll keep it consistent here with the analyst group, and we will run that. And so now I can see here high-level view of the allocations, the availability of the staff. I can dynamically add in a few of the different capacity versus utilization forecasts here for the team. So a lot of different good views that I can use here as we started off with, right? You can start off and kind of configure your own role-based dashboard as well. So the last thing I'd like to show here, and then we'll open it up for questions, is to go in and look at the from a timesheet perspective. Now you don't need to do timesheets. We know that's a big organizational change area, but it is available. Many of you might be using time cards already as part of just ITSM, but here with ITBM, you're able to get an actual timesheet portal that brings those time cards all together in one place. So here is my overall timesheet portal. I could copy all my time cards and have them listed here. My previous timesheet, I can generate it. So you can see over here, I've got a couple of projects. I have a couple of incidents here. I've got project tasks. So I could say generate the timesheet. So all of my project work that's assigned to me for tasks that are work in progress will now show up here, and I can start entering my time against those projects. I could come in and also add in the enhancement as well. For those of you that are using time worked on your enhancement as an example, that time work can roll up here into your timesheet. So that way you don't need to enter or dual entry of that particular time. So I could come over here and look at just entering in some time real quick. So I could enter in my time here for this project. We can say for this incident that maybe I did 2 hours for a couple of days. And so now I come down to this other project, doing a lot of testing on that initiative, and I can make updates there. So I can start to see that I've now submitted 24 hours, 10 hours on project, 10 hours on project task, 4 hours on incidents. If that looks good, I could go off then and submit. Now you can set policies to make sure that there's a minimum number of hours people would submit. But at that point, I could then go off and submit my timesheet. So that's how easily you can go in and manage your timesheet portal. The other thing here to highlight is I'm sure you already have your My Worker or My Work dashboard, so you could obviously just update and include additional task types and see all your project tasks. You could do issues and risks. So the actual team member, they just go to their dashboard page like they're doing today, and they would just see additional tasks or issues and risks showing up to do their work. And the project manager would manage the whole project schedule. All right. So I'm going to go back to the presentation here. And so just to kind of give you an idea of some common customer next steps, because Jason, I believe that you guys own this capability, want to make sure you're getting additional value for what you own if you're not using it today. So if you wanted to come back and do a deep dive demo with your team, we can do that. And so that typically occurs working with a few customers now and discussing their implementation requirements. And so we can do that, and we can guide and recommend different rapid start offerings that we have to help with the implementation. So it doesn't have to be laborious to do your implementation. Once we've discussed those requirements, we can come back and let you know which rapid start offering, provide a proposal. We can collaborate with Jason and teams. ServiceNow has a business value analysis report that can be developed to really take the inputs here around what you're going to implement, the capabilities, then use that to come back with a business value report so you can see basically your benefit of doing the implementation versus the cost of using the solutions you have today. And then we could just move forward and plan and schedule a rapid start implementation. So those are some of the common next steps. Jason, any other common things that you would like to highlight for the participants today on next steps and next things that we can provide for them?
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Yeah, so just kind of clarify a little bit the division of labor. The proposal is something that John can put together for you, and I just want to emphasize that his team has been extremely flexible. So if you have a primary service provider that you typically work with, he has no problem, putting together a scenario where he would sub under your current service provider. So it's not a, definitive either or kind of thing. And also that business value analysis is a ServiceNow tool that we have, not just for this portfolio management, but all of our different modules that we offer. And Scott and I are more than willing to schedule a session to put together that BVA for any module that you're considering that can be part and parcel of your business plan that you bring to management to build a business case around furthering your use of the ServiceNow platform. There's no cost for that, and it's purely in an effort to increase the value that you're receiving from current investment within ServiceNow.
Thanks, Jason. Well, we want to thank you so much for attending today. And as Jason mentioned, we've been working on Island, and we have various relationships with the existing service providers. So however you'd like to manage that, we can assist you. So thanks again for your time, and we wanted to provide value to you today. So hopefully you're educated and find out more about how you can use some of the assets you already own.